Greetings and God bless. I'm listening to a book by an author who is from South Africa, and she grew up during apartheid. And apartheid had the government was killing people, raping people, murdering, imprisoning people. As anybody who grew up in the 80s, 90s, you would hear a bit about apartheid, where the Dutch, I guess it was the Dutch influence. And it's interesting because the Dutch also were involved, I believe, in the Hutu Tutsi massacre. So the Dutch, from Holland, they pitted the Hutu and Tutsi against each other. I mean, I like Dutch people. I don't know a whole lot of them, um, but for some reason, when the globalist Dutch people start messing around, and in Africa, you know, looks like bad things happen. So, because I think the Dutch had, they were this large business, sort of like in New York City. Was it the Dutch West Indies Company? Anyways, some big company, I guess 1700s, 1800s, did a lot of colonization, I guess you could say. And the whole point of colonization is to make a profit. And that's definitely what's been going on in the current apartheid. And I don't even have to explain it. Anybody with two brain cells can figure out what apartheid I'm talking about that's been going on the past couple of years. And there have been executions. There people have been driven to commit suicide due to the psychological pressure that has been inflicted on people. I When I was living in the in San Francisco, in South Dakota, once the this particular hospital mandated injections, two nurses committed suicide. Uh, so people are killing themselves rather than have to take a forced mRNA injection that's not FDA approved. This is an apartheid, and so government workers don't have to take the mRNA injection. Pfizer employees don't have to take the injection. Post office workers, I think, don't have to take the injection. I think Amazon, So if you're in with the globalist control mechanism, they don't have to take the injection. And and what's interesting is, so the doctors were pushing it. They were like, "I'm just doing my job. I don't know what's going on. I'm just the employee here." But then they didn't want to take the injection, understandably. I mean, we're seeing what's going on, like babies having heart attacks, and I mean, it's just mind-boggling that people are like, "Yeah, babies have heart attacks. Athletes have heart attacks on the field." 2019 and before, for millennium, nobody was having heart attacks with the same statistical significance that we see today in 2023. And people are like, it's a good thing. We need to do that. So, folks, even if you're pro mask, pro force, pro injection, pro isolation, this has created an apartheid because people can't work. People can't speak. They can't talk about, you know, like, I mean, they can't even talk about what I'm talking about here. They can't talk about the reverse racism that they've been experiencing, or the heterophobia that they're experiencing, or the, what's the word, misogyny. Like, biological women are now experiencing misogyny, in my opinion. Because, in my experience, a lot of gay men and trans men, like the male to female, they despise biological women, and it's misogyny. Like, they want women away. Like, it's like a philosophical segregationist kind of a thing. And and then you erase the existence of biological female. That's the end point. And there's this hostility also to biological males. So this narrative that progressive liberals think that they're being such saints about, it's going to erase them, because a lot of progressive liberals think, oh, you know, I'm a female and I'm a feminist and I'm going to be safe. No, that's not what this agenda is about. This agenda, and it's not even going to treat the trans and gay people well in the end, because this agenda is satanic. But anyways, my point is that if you don't like apartheid, even if you're very LBGT, very Marxist, like think, as we have found ourselves in an apartheid, and an apartheid where people don't even realize it's a problem. Like, I have friends who are so insulated, they're not concerned. They poo-poo scientific documents and legal documents. They're just like, oh, this is all nonsense. And the thing is, people have been fired, people have committed suicide, um, people have been executed because that's the job, like in nursing homes and hospitals. So, folks, the USA has been, there's a coup that's occurred, and there's an apartheid, and it's like this magical apartheid. It's the satanic apartheid that's taken over. And unfortunately, like the Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And like Christians, a lot of Christians, I think, realize something's not right the past couple of years. I mean, the fact that, you could buy cigarettes and alcohol and get tattoos during lockdowns, but you couldn't go to church. Like you could set the downtown on fire, but you couldn't go to church. You couldn't sing. Like, utterly ridiculous. So I think more Christians kind of know. And then the progressive liberals are like, everything's great. Like, they're drinking the Kool-Aid, even though otherwise they're very smart, capable people. So, anyways, please don't support the apartheid, and that's all we have to do is just opt out of supporting the apartheid. And that could be little things like when somebody's like, did you get your latest vial? You could say, I don't do those. I don't do those drugs. I'm not into needles, you know. Or if somebody's, trying to be provocative, like that's what I notice is like I'll have a completely pleasant conversation with somebody I just met, and they want to talk about my medical status. And that's like very rude. Like in the age of, I mean, like when you're not into the needle magic, you are now considered, um, and that's how the Nazis did in Germany, is they called the Jewish people unclean. And that's what people who get that needle magic, they call those who don't do needle magic, they call that unclean and dangerous just by being around, being alive. And like with this apartheid stuff, people, it becomes a bloodbath, like Rwanda, and the Hutu and Tutsis. I mean, it was like like bodies, on the streets, like chopped up with machetes. And I think, I bet if I asked a majority of liberals, do you think people who are not into the needle magic should die? And if I gave you a machete, would you kill us? And I think a lot of uh, liberals would be like, yeah, yeah, you should die. I mean, I've had friends who were Christian telling me I should die because I didn't want to cover my mouth. I didn't want to cover my breathing. I didn't want to suffocate for the cause. Even when, if you look on the packaging of those N95s, it says it doesn't prevent, because the so-called vector everybody's scared of, this phantom, it's so small. It's a tiny micron size, so it's smaller than fabric, and yet everybody's walking around with, like, their cheetah print face diaper, or they're like, oh, I'm gonna wear NASA on my face, or I'm gonna wear whatever on my face. I'm so cute, suffocating myself, and trying to pressure you to suffocate yourself too. It's this little club, or it's this big club. It's this big cult, because a club is just like you come and go. There's not a whole lot of pressure. I mean, I guess at some clubs there probably is. There are politics and whatnot, and people getting murdered and whatever. But clubs are fairly fairly small. But with a cult is much more insidious. It's more has more of a deliberate mind control element to it, and that's what's we have this cult that's created an apartheid. And I think, like, there's people who are good and intelligent that for some reason are unwilling to look at the facts, and they're like, my facts are whatever Fauci said, even though Fauci has changed his facts like 10 times. And Fauci has a history, from 30, 40 years ago with AIDS that was questionable. But folks are just like, this is the way I'm going to do it, and they're so stubborn or whatever. So I don't know if there's any point to trying to resist this apartheid, this black magic cult apartheid of genetic, because it's genetics. I mean, they, like, Moderna is a genetic therapy company. Moderna uses gene therapy for its cancer treatment. I mean, that's what they, at least when I looked at up in 2021, that's what the website says. I don't know if they've scrubbed it, because now everybody's like, oh, it's not gene therapy, but it is. I mean, that's the word mRNA, RNA has to do with genetics. So, and then there's like this nanotechnology that delivers a payload. And if you look up nanotechnology and graphene oxide, it's like the top level um, tools that can deliver a payload to a directed part of the body. And I'm no expert, but there's information out there. If people are willing to look, just do your own research through your own sources. And if you're willing to look at PubMed or medical journals, it's going to tell you. But people don't want to. They think that if they just believe hard enough that everything's going to work out, and maybe a Hutu Tutsi massacre is what progressive liberals want. Maybe subconsciously they like the idea of murdering people, even though they're saying that they're not. I mean, they're pro killing babies. I mean, now babies can be murdered up to a year in some states or something like that. So, like, a baby that's almost a toddler can be killed because the Church of Satan has its religious imperative. I mean, it's. I mean, Jesus has to return soon, because this is unbelievable. Like, what's been happening the past 2.5 years, as of 2018, would be unthinkable. But wow, 2 years, and I bet, like, I'm recording this January 2023, and I bet February and March are going to have new, bizarre, weird things that we would never think about, that we would never consider. But that's what, like, these globalists, they spend all this money that I think they have stolen from big programs. Like, I wonder if these international funds that are sent to Ukraine or the Middle East to talk about transgenderism, or or homeless programs. I wonder if that money is then laundered and then put into think tanks to devise this psychotic situation we find ourselves in. Because where does this money come from? You know, I mean, I guess we could say it's Soros and all, but so if you're anti-apartheid, really, we are in an apartheid right now. The West is in an apartheid stranglehold, and it's just, you know, if you have any shred of integrity, this needs to stop. And you know, I'm not a big person into violence because I don't think, number one, whoever perpetuates it, like there's some harm that comes to them. But I think we can do opt outs, you know, and we don't have to comply. And I think it's good to speak up to say, you know, even if you are pro mask and injection and stuff like that, but, you know, still speak up that, you know, all white people shouldn't have to die, or all uninjected shouldn't have to die. Like, I think it's good to be like, you know, it works for me. I want to do this injection and whatnot, but I'm not going to shove it down somebody else's throat. And if you know, I think if people are so afraid of this thing where there's a 90%, 97% recovery rate. I mean, it's a mild illness, but if you're so afraid of getting a minor cold, then stay home. I mean, it's like, what is the big deal? And especially now with Zoom and everything, like so many jobs, you know, are for staying at home. And you know what I noticed? I think the people who really are pushing this whole agenda are wealthy, privileged people. Because working class people, they're just, you know, wearing the mask, doing the injections because they're just so swamped and they just need to be efficient. But I don't think working class entry level people are like, oh yeah, I'm really worried about that. No, it's usually upper management that seems to be like this. And you know, these are people who have a lot of privilege and have a lot of leverage, and yet they want to force it down. You know, it's usually it's the you know, the entry level worker that really has to bear the brunt, because also when you're in management you get to, you know, you don't have to come to work every day, or you know, you're on salary. So anyways, those are my thoughts. So just, you know, gently opt out of the apartheid. That's the most powerful way, you know, just do your own thing and um, opt out of evil. Thank you for watching. God bless.